one of the students, the very first students at SOMAFCO, who was able to come to the United States, study at City College in New York City, and she went back to South Africa and joined the diplomatic corps. She is now the ambassador to Norway from South Africa. She nominated me for an award called the Oliver Tambo Award. When she sent in the nomination, she called my daughter and also Ellen Hart, who's secretary of Friends of SOMAFCO, and she told them she needed my biography to write, but not to tell me, because she didn't really think I would get the award, and she didn't want me to be disappointed. So she nominated me, and all of a sudden, my daughter is asking me all these questions. I just thought she was interested in my history. But she and Ellen were preparing my biography for Sally Ramovkapa to send to the South African government for this award. So I get this phone call from Pretoria, and they tell me that they're emailing me a letter requesting my presence at this award ceremony. Award of the Order of O.R. Tambo Bronze to Miss Rosita Johnson. I have the pleasure of informing you that President M.C. Ramaphosa has accepted your nomination for the Order of the Companion of O.R. Tambo in bronze. Huh? That's exactly my response. The President has therefore decided to honor you with the Order of the Companion of O.R. Tambo in silver. So they're not going to give me just the bronze. I'm going to get the silver for your outstanding contribution to the well-being of young South African exiles through scholarships and raising awareness of the plight of South Africans under apartheid. The award ceremony will be held on the 28th of April 2018, and it goes on and on and on and on. Please contact Ms. for travel arrangements. You may bring a companion. So, of course, my son and my daughter, we'll go. And I said, no, Godfrey's brother, I've already contacted him, and he's going to accept the award for me. As if that wasn't a shock, these are the other nominees who are getting this award. His Excellency Mr. Joaquim Alberto Chissano, a former president of Mozambique. A former His Excellency Sir somebody from Botswana. His Excellency Dr. Samuel Daniel Sam Nujoma, the first president of Namibia. Her Excellency Miss Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, former president of Liberia. Ambassador Alexander Zaskovis from Russia. And Miss Rosita Johnson, USA. I said, what? This is unbelievable. I first got involved in working in activities about South Africa. The seed was planted when I saw on the news in 1976 the police firing upon students who were protesting peacefully. That picture stayed with me. I was a union activist. That's part of my history. I was a delegate to the AFT convention that year, and there formed at that convention the AFT Black Caucus. And one of our goals was to go back to our school districts and try to get our union to support divestment and get the union to work with other unions to get the city of Philadelphia to support divestment of any company, not to buy anything from a business or a company that was doing business with South Africa. And that's how I first got involved. Well, I guess it was the summer of 1987. I went to a meeting, and the labor unions had come together and they had a meeting entitled Labor Against Apartheid. Bernie Dinkins was the chair. And he had a speaker at that meeting from New Haven, Connecticut. And she was talking about how New Haven had a project where they were supporting this school in Tanzania, the Solomon Malongu Freedom College, where many of the high school students who fled the country had gone to, and how the whole little city, I call it a little city because, I'm thinking Philadelphia has, 1.5 million people. But the city of New Haven came together to do this project. And she said, someone in Philadelphia should come and do this project. Someone should go and try to get Philadelphia to do this project. So a gentleman who was there, he got up and he said, yes, you're right. And Godfrey Satoli, who was the ANC representative here in the Delaware Valley, he came over. This was Van Elliott Williams, and he said, yes, who else here would like to try to get the city to do this project? And I said, oh, I would. Not really thinking, because I'm teaching every day. I'm a busy person. So that summer, 1987, Van Elliott Williams and we started Friends of SOMAFCO, and we wrote a letter to whoever was the mayor, I don't remember, and the city council people, and saying, look what they're doing in New Haven. Let's have a city project. Unfortunately, no one responded to our letter or our phone calls, so we said, well, we'll do it ourselves. And because I had been studying at Temple for my master's degree, I met Dr. Asante and had another professor, Dr. Cato, who is now deceased. He was from South Africa. And when they heard about us starting, they said, we will help get you space at Temple to store things, to store the collection, which they did. I was surprised how many people came to that first organizing meeting, and we just had many good workers. And over the next 2 years, we actually had a collection of 14 tons of books and clothing and school supplies. Someone in the bulletin, remember the bulletin? It doesn't exist now. Well, one of the columnists, and I should remember her name, I can't remember, she put an article about what we were doing in the bulletin and my telephone number. And so my phone was ringing in every Saturday. One of my daughters would take, she had 2 little children, and she and her children and I and other people would go down to Stauffer Hall, which does not exist anymore. It was to be torn down. That's why they said you can store things there. And then people would bring items, and we would go through every item. We did not send anything that was in bad condition. We would just get rid of clothing or books or whatever. Several schools participated. And when they were getting a new reading series, we would go and pick up the old one. I know Pennypacker School, where Ellen Hart taught, they were very involved. So it just got bigger and bigger and bigger. And then January 1989, this big tractor trailer came, and they took the 14 tons and it was shipped to the school. After the shipment left in January 1989, I thought that was the end. But Godfrey Satoli, the ANC representative, said, no, you must keep this organization together. We need to spread the word to different communities of what is going on so that they will support the liberation in South Africa. Within a month, a young woman came down from New York. She was a South African student in exile at City College, and she had been at SOMAFCO. She was one of the first students, and she said, one of our teachers, Keith Posse, wants to come here to get his master's degree in teaching. Would Friends of SOMAFCO sponsor him? I said, oh, sure. Never thought it through. We never thought it through. We just said yes. And so he did. He came here, and he said that he had applied for a scholarship from the United Nations, but it had not come through. So he was to study at the University of Pennsylvania. But in the intermediate time, before the United Nations gave him the grant, we had to clothe and feed him, find him a place to live, and luckily it all turned out beautifully. And he did go to the University of Pennsylvania, and he did get his master's degree in education. In 1993, after Nelson Mandela was freed, there was an international conference to support the ANC. It was being held in Johannesburg, South Africa, and people from all over the world were invited to attend. And I and two other people from Philadelphia represented Philadelphia, Delaware Valley of the anti-apartheid organizations in this area. So that was my first trip. I'm still teaching. I'm still teaching. And I had to get permission from the school district to go to this conference. And so I had to be gone for 5 days, a school week, and I did my lesson plans, and I don't know how I did it, but I did. And I went there, and while I was there, I visited 2 primary schools in Soweto, and they became projects because we sent books so that they could establish libraries in those 2 schools. At the conference, Nelson Mandela was at the conference, Oliver Tambo was at the conference, even though he was quite ill. All the leaders were there. People from European countries, Asian countries, all the African countries, Canada, United States. There were over 2,000 people, and they asked our commitment to go back to our countries and raise funds for voter education so that they could go out and educate people on voting, because this is something they knew nothing about, and distribute materials. And so that was our next project. And we organized the ANC Walkathon, and people would sign up, and we had nearly 200 people in the walkathon. It was just magnificent. That was 1994. Because of age and health concerns, our Friends of SOMAFCO Board of Directors decided at the end of 2017 that we were going to retire from our activities. But we promised Rosie's Kitchen that every January we will do a fundraising letter and try to raise at least $1,000 to send to Rosie's Kitchen. And I've got to get ready right now and write my letter. And I have my first contribution. We have our first contribution, and that is very encouraging.